Tara Morgan arrived in Ashton Hollow with nothing but a backpack and a haunted past. 30 days later, Henry Malloy, the kind stranger who took her in, was rotting in his own closet while she slept peacefully in his bed. It started in the small town of Ashton Hollow, a quiet place where the loudest sounds came from church bells on Sundays and the occasional train that passed through once a day. The kind of town where everyone knew each other by name, where people left their doors unlocked and where a new face stuck out like a sore thumb. That's why when Tara Morgan arrived one cloudy afternoon, she caught everyone's attention. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept in days. Her clothes were clean but worn, and she carried only a faded green backpack slung over one shoulder. No one knew where she had come from, but she told the grocer she'd taken a bus from the city, escaping a bad relationship and looking for somewhere to breathe. She didn't come across as dangerous. If anything, she looked broken, someone who had been through too much. People pitied her more than they feared her. Tara stayed in the background, quiet and polite, not asking for much. She had no job, no car, and no family in town, but she never made a scene. She sat in the back pew at church and kept her head down at the diner. Still, everyone talked. A woman like her, alone and drifting into town without warning, sparked curiosity in Ashton Hollow. The first person to offer more than a polite smile was Henry Malloy, a 64-year-old retired music teacher who had lived in the town his entire life. He was soft-spoken, never married, and spent his time reading old books or walking his spaniel, Daisy. Henry was known for his generosity. He'd once let a stranded motorist sleep in his guest room during a snowstorm and was always donating to the local food bank. He didn't see people for what they lacked. He saw them for what they could be if someone just showed a little kindness. When he met Tara, she was sitting on a bench near the library, staring off into space. It had just started to rain, and she didn't seem to care. Henry, always prepared, offered her his umbrella. That simple gesture sparked a conversation. She told him only what she had to, that she had nowhere to go, that she wasn't looking for charity, just a chance to start over. Henry invited her to stay in his spare bedroom, just for a while, until she found a job or got back on her feet. She hesitated at first, but eventually accepted. From the outside, it looked like a good thing, a kind man helping a woman in need. Neighbors thought it was sweet, even admirable. Some said Henry was brave, others said he was naive, but most people let it be. What no one realized was how quickly Tara would move in, not just physically, but emotionally. Within days, she acted as if the house were her own, rearranging furniture, changing the radio station, and even putting Henry's books into storage boxes. It was subtle at first, quiet, but the shift was real. She had come with nothing, but she settled in like she had always belonged, and in less than a month, she would be the only one left living in that house. At first, life inside Henry Malloy's home seemed peaceful. The old house, filled with quiet corners and the soft hum of classical music, offered Tara a calm she hadn't felt in years. She kept to herself during the first few days, careful not to overstep. She swept the floors, washed the dishes, and made small talk when necessary. Henry, polite and gentle, didn't press her with questions. He was content to offer her shelter, a warm meal, and a sense of stability. For a while, it seemed like an arrangement that worked for both of them, but something shifted by the second week. Tara no longer moved cautiously through the house. She began occupying more space, both physically and emotionally. She took over the kitchen, rearranged items in the living room, and started using Henry's study, where he kept his music collection and old photographs. She claimed it was just temporary, that she liked the light in the room, but soon his records were stacked in boxes, and her clothes were draped over the furniture. Henry didn't argue. If he noticed the slow takeover, he said nothing. Tara started, ordering things online, small items at first, like new bed sheets and kitchenware, then more expensive pieces, a phone, headphones, clothing. She had found Henry's passwords tucked inside a drawer and quietly began accessing his bank account. Nothing outrageous, just enough to draw from steadily. She made the purchases look like his, carefully spacing them out to avoid attention. Henry, who wasn't tech-savvy, never checked his statements. He trusted that his modest retirement savings would be enough for two. Neighbors began to notice her more. She no longer kept her head down in public. She walked Daisy each morning, nodding to the mailman, smiling at passers-by. She offered updates to those who asked about Henry, saying he wasn't feeling great or that he was taking time to himself. She was friendly but guarded, giving just enough information to stop questions before they started. People were reassured. A woman caring for an old man wasn't unusual. In fact, it seemed admirable. Inside the house, Henry became quieter. He stopped reading in the den, stopped calling friends from his rotary phone. He spent more time in his bedroom, where the door often stayed closed. Tara began locking it from the outside, explaining that he needed rest and didn't want to be disturbed. She turned down visitors with soft reassurances and warm smiles. No one insisted. Everyone believed her. After all, she seemed stable, nurturing, calm. No one imagined that something might be terribly wrong. The air inside the house grew heavier as the days passed. Henry's routines faded into the background. His music stopped playing. His dog, once always at his feet, began sleeping by the door, unsure of what was happening. Meanwhile, Tara settled in more each day. She had come with nothing but now lived in comfort, surrounded by someone else's belongings, wearing someone else's name in quiet confidence. And with each passing day, Henry Malloy drifted further out of the life he had once known until he vanished completely. Inside the quiet home at the edge of Ashton Hollow, life had taken a strange, eerie turn. Tara Morgan was now the only person anyone ever saw at the Malloy residence. She answered the door, fed the dog, and paid for deliveries. Everything on. The surface seemed in order, but behind that facade was something far more disturbing. The once warm and inviting home had turned cold and silent. Where there used to be music and life, there was now only a lingering stillness, heavy and unnatural. Tara had slowly taken over every part of Henry Malloy's life. His bedroom had become hers. The soft floral bedspread he had always used was gone, replaced with new linens and pillows she had ordered online using his credit card. She had boxed up family photos, stored away the framed certificates from his teaching years, and filled the kitchen with food he never would have eaten. To anyone walking in, the house no longer felt like Henry's. It had transformed into a reflection of Tara, and no one had noticed the change. She began using his bank accounts, making purchases every few days. Mostly small things at first. Groceries, toiletries, dog food. Then came the bigger charges. A new phone, clothing, electronics, home furnishings. She didn't go overboard, but she made sure to look like someone who belonged, someone who had access. She even started responding to emails from Henry's old friends, writing brief replies in his tone, saying he was resting, or visiting distant relatives, or simply enjoying some peace and quiet. It worked well enough to keep suspicions away. Tara, was methodical. She canceled his magazine subscriptions. She updated delivery instructions. She answered the phone with a confident tone and let calls from certain numbers go unanswered. When a distant cousin tried to arrange a visit, she said Henry wasn't feeling well and wouldn't be up for company. When the neighbor suggested bringing over soup, Tara claimed he was finally getting some sleep and didn't want to be disturbed. She used calm excuses, each one believable enough to delay concern. But the air in the house had changed. A smell began to form, faint at first, something musty and metallic, which Tara tried to mask with candles and air fresheners. She kept the master bedroom door shut at all times. She moved Daisy's dog bed to the hallway and stopped letting her wander freely into rooms she used to nap in. When the dog scratched at the closet door one night, Tara scolded her harshly and locked her in the guest bathroom until morning. She couldn't risk anything being discovered. The truth was hidden behind that locked closet door. Henry's body was still inside, wrapped in sheets, surrounded by airtight plastic bags, and tucked into the dark corner of the space where he used to keep his winter coats. No one had come looking. No one had asked to see him in person. And so Tara continued, each day blending into the next, as she lived among his things, spent his money, and pretended that everything was fine. She had created a world inside that house, one where the man who had once taken her in no longer existed, and no one outside its walls seemed to notice. She was in control now, and as long as the lies held up, she could keep living in that house with Henry's ghost, quietly, hidden in the dark. It was a warm afternoon when the first real crack in Tara's carefully built world appeared. A utility worker had been assigned to check a routine meter reading on the side of Henry Malloy's house. It should have taken less than 5 minutes, but the worker paused when he caught a strange odor coming from a vent beneath the master bedroom. At first he assumed it was something minor, maybe a dead animal in the crawlspace, but the smell was too strong, too sour. He reported it to his supervisor, and within hours, the gas company arrived to rule out any dangerous leaks. They found no gas issues, but what they did find was something that unsettled them enough to call the police. When officers from Ashton Hollow arrived, they knocked politely. Tara answered the door with the same practiced smile she'd used for weeks. She acted surprised but cooperative, explaining that Henry was unwell and resting in his room. The officers asked if they could come in, citing the smell and a community safety concern. Her hesitation was brief but noticeable. With no choice, she let them inside. As soon as they stepped through the doorway, the officers felt it. The thick, humid air clinging to the walls, the unmistakable scent of decomposition woven into every corner. It was strongest in the hallway leading to the master bedroom. Tara followed them, but her posture had changed. The calm confidence she had used to control the narrative was starting to crack. She tried to offer explanations. Maybe something had died under the floorboards. Maybe the dog had dragged something in. None of it sounded convincing. The officers reached the master bedroom and saw that the door was closed and locked. Tara claimed Henry was inside sleeping, but when they insisted on checking, she froze. One of the officers gently pushed past her and forced the door open. The room was dim, the curtains tightly drawn, but the smell hit them like a wave. The closet door, wedged slightly ajar, revealed dark plastic lining spilling from within. What they found inside stopped them cold. Henry Malloy's body was discovered curled in the back of the closet, wrapped in thick layers of plastic and bedding, clearly placed there with care, but without any professional handling. His skin had discolored. His limbs stiffened unnaturally. There were signs he had been there for weeks, maybe longer. The room had been sealed off, but the body had begun to leak through its makeshift containment, causing the smell to seep out. Tara didn't run. She didn't protest or cry. When asked what had happened, she remained silent. She was arrested on the spot, and as officers searched the rest of the house, they began to piece together the timeline: the empty bottles of sleeping pills, the financial records showing money slowly being drained from Henry's accounts, the new possessions, the emails she had faked, the lies she had told. The calm caretaker image she had built collapsed in a single afternoon. Neighbors watched from across the street as officers carried boxes of evidence out of the house. Daisy was taken by animal control, her tail tucked low. The quiet home once, filled with music and gentle kindness, had become a crime scene. And for the first time, the town of Ashton Hollow saw what had really been going on behind those locked doors. In the weeks that followed Tara Morgan's arrest, Ashton Hollow struggled to absorb the shock of what had happened. The peaceful town, long untouched by anything more serious than the occasional traffic ticket or rowdy teenagers, was suddenly at the center of a true crime story that felt more like fiction than fact. The newspapers called it the Closet Corpse Case. National media picked it up. Reporters showed up at the edge of town, filming B-roll of Henry Malloy's house behind police tape. People who had never given Tara a second glance now pored over every detail, desperate to understand who she really was and how she had pulled off something so horrifying in plain sight. Her real name wasn't Tara Morgan. Investigators revealed she was Denise Fowler, a 38-year-old woman with a long trail of false identities, short stays in small towns, and men who had all mysteriously lost touch with her shortly after she entered their lives. She had never been convicted of anything serious before, but law enforcement in several states had flagged her name under various aliases in connection with financial fraud, elder exploitation, and identity theft. She was a drifter with a method. Slip into a town unnoticed, find a vulnerable, isolated man, earn his trust, take over his life, and disappear before anyone started asking questions. But this time, she stayed too long. This time, she killed. The autopsy revealed that Henry Malloy had died from a massive overdose of sleeping pills. The dosage was not survivable and had likely been given all at once. There were no signs of struggle. Henry likely had no idea what was happening. One moment, he was drinking tea in his kitchen, probably served by someone he thought was his friend, and the next, his body began to shut down. By the time the drugs took full effect, it was too late. Denise never called for help. She watched him die and then calmly wrapped his body and dragged it into the closet, locking away the last remaining proof of the man who had taken her in with kindness. In court, she showed no remorse. Dressed in plain gray prison clothes, she stood silently as the charges were read: second-degree murder, identity theft, financial fraud, and concealment of a corpse. Prosecutors painted a picture of a manipulative woman who exploited trust like a weapon. The defense had little to offer in return. There was no insanity plea, no dramatic outbursts, just the quiet acceptance of someone who had been caught in the act. Denise Fowler was sentenced to life in prison without parole. After the trial, Henry Malloy's house sat empty for months. Neighbors said they could still smell the faint odor of death on humid days. The town tried to move on, but things had changed. Doors were locked now. Strangers were met with cautious eyes instead of warm smiles. The story left behind a deep scar, not just because of what happened, but because of how easily it happened. A kind man opened his home to someone in need, and in return, she erased him from his own life. No one would ever forget the woman who had lived with his corpse, hidden behind a closet door, for over a month while pretending nothing was wrong.